It's quite shocking.
By the way, we all refer to you affectionately as the twat in the hat.
The twat in the hat? Yeah. I'm not going to tell you what we call you, sir.
Point to order, Mark Francois. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do.
Soldiers of the parachute regiment routinely carry out target practice.
You'll be surprised by what they're aiming at.
Jeremy Corbyn is apparently that target.
This is the What and the Why podcast for the week ending the 4th of April, 2019.
Take a look at the oranges.
Welcome to podcast 23, which according to Wikipedia is, quote, the natural number following 22 and preceding 24. Thank you, Wikipedia. In this podcast, the perfectly natural behaviour of smelling the hair of someone you don't know. Lucky for Joe Biden, he didn't try this in Brunei, where he would probably be lashed for such actions. Also, but I didn't shoot Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell, which is of limited comfort to the British Ministry of Defence as they investigate why soldiers from the parachute regiment were using an image of the leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, for target practice on a shooting range. But first, a man fighting in the literary trenches. Medic! Medic! Medic!
Oh, go on.
That's you, David.
I know it is, and you want to... Yeah, go on. Let's go.
Dr. David Waywell.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
No.
Every week, David. Every week.
Yeah, you're not supposed to use it outside of academia, so I'm not in academia, so I just want to be David Waywell.
Dr. David Waywell, how was your week?
It's been really busy. Really busy.
That's good. It's better than not being at all busy.
I know, but, you know...
But slightly less than just the right amount of busy.
Yeah, I did a lot of cartoons and I had some pretty good successes. I did a cartoon for... do you know the guy who stands outside Parliament waving the flag and annoying everybody?
Stop Brexit!
Yeah,
that one, yeah.
Yeah, well, Mark Francois had called him... I'm going to lower the tone here. A twat in the hat.
Yeah, yeah.
So I did a twat in the hat cartoon, which has got me about 700 retweets and stuff. So
not bad at all. Did you see, as we're mentioning the tea in a hat, because this is a family podcast, David, did you see...
I'll go back and
Did you see Piers Morgan on Good Morning Britain?
One, I avoid Piers Morgan, and two, I'm never up that early, so...
Well, you know all the gazebos that the broadcasters have outside Parliament, and they're broadcasting live? Well, he was actually in his... studio, but they still have a gazebo possibly for guests or whatever.
In the studio?
No, so Piers Morgan is in his studio. The tea in the hat is outside Parliament with his megaphone saying, "Stop Brexit!"
Yeah.
And so, but they got the gazebo of Good Morning Britain, which is probably there for live guests or whatever.
Yeah.
And they turned their screen round and the loudspeaker to face this guy in the hat with the megaphone, at which point Piers Morgan picked up a massive loudhailer in his studio and started going, "Oi, you! Yeah, you in the hat!" and bellowing at him through his own megaphone, which I thought was a great bit of live telly.
Yeah.
Good.
No, I agree. Niall Patterson was on Twitter yesterday, and he was saying he was going to go around to his house and wake him up, and they followed like a really good. There was a really good thread where he's having an argument with some bloke, and it's hilariously funny. But yeah,
right.
I think everybody wants to do that.
Now to your favourite story of the week and the heir apparent of the White House.
Oh, Joe Biden, yeah, sniffing people's hair.
Well,
sniffing people's hair he doesn't know.
And here he is this week in saying the sort of things that he does.
I shake hands, I hug people, I grab men and women by the shoulders and say, "You can do this."
And then he kisses the backs of their heads and he smells their hair and he nuzzles their noses.
You're making it sound weird now.
Yeah.
He's been doing it for donkey's years. It's Biden. This is what people say Biden's like.
Okay.
So.
It hasn't been proven that any of it was inappropriate behaviour.
No, I don't think any of it was.
Well, hang on. Yes, he does indeed, as he's just said, take people by the shoulders. He is touchy-feely in that old-fashioned sense of just being friendly. But there are some proper allegations against him, aren't there?
Oh, well, when you say proper allegations, it's about invading people's personal space and going too far, and people.
Well, yeah, excuse me, like running your hand up and down the back, naked back, because of a strapless dress or something, of someone whose husband was noticing it and got hold of his hand. Allegedly, I don't know, obviously, one way or the other.
Yeah.
Putting his hand on someone's thigh, allegedly. But yeah, and there have been these rumours about him for years, and now they're coming to the fore because it looks like he's going to stand for the presidency, yeah?
I wouldn't say they were rumours. I think everybody knows that Joe Biden has had a certain way about his politics, which a lot of people like. And then in the new climate of Me Too, it then raises questions whether it's appropriate. But then, of course, the Democrats leap back and say, well, maybe Me Too is going too far now. But when Woody Allen made the same argument like 2 years ago, he was... I mean, that's the case Amazon are now bringing against Woody Allen. He said pretty much what Democrats are now saying, and that's the reason they've cancelled Woody Allen's contract with Amazon. So there's a lot of politics being played here. I mean, you've also got to realise that some of this is coming from the Republicans. This is part of the beginning campaign. The Republicans are going to go after Joe Biden hard because he is probably, one of the best candidates to beat Trump. So
yeah, and I think I'm guessing he will survive this.
I think he'll survive it, and I think he'll moderate his behaviour because there's no room for Republicans to run on this, because you've got Trump admitting what he does, and he doesn't just rub his hands up against people's back,
yes.
Without going too anatomical about it. So I just don't think there's any room for them to run with it. I think it's just the start of they're trying to get they're trying to establish a narrative before he actually announces his running.
And there was no apology to the women who've made the accusations, but of course, if he says, "Look, I was just being friendly," he can't apologise for an action other than to say, "Well, I will understand more about personal space in the modern age."
I think this is all about nuance and having to establish a message, because, like you say, if he does apologise, then he's admitting doing wrong, whereas Trump has never admitted he was doing wrong.
No, hang on, he's not apologising, is he? He's saying my friendly actions are misunderstood, and that but they weren't intentional. That's what he's saying.
Yeah, because he can't apologise, because the moment he apologises, he's handing the advantage to the other side, and that's why Trump's effectively winning, because he never apologises.
I put it to you, David, that leaning into somebody from behind and smelling their hair is odd.
I agree. I agree, but I agree. These rumours have been around Biden for a long time, and one of the questions can be asked is why has Obama not got behind Biden? They think it's because he's too old, but
I see. So that if Obama reckons he can't make it to the White House, what's the point of fully backing him and endorsing him? Whereas in fact he's going to save his gunpowder for somebody else.
They suggest he's put his team behind Beto O'Rourke. So.
Did you see Mr. Biden's? He made this 2-minute video.
He did, yeah.
Have you watched it?
I have watched it. I saw it last night.
Well, I mean that the clip I just played is from that video. How do you think he handled himself?
Well, it's Biden, isn't it? Biden is Biden. This is the difficulty I have is, the Biden does not play a politician. He plays the average bloke, just in a position, going for a political job. And his great virtue is he does what Trump does. He talks with people or to people, not above people. So if you believe Biden, you believe what he says. If you don't believe Biden, you're going to think it's all hooey, aren't you?
So there was no mea culpa, but there was a sort of mea get it.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I like that.
Which I'll play in... thank you. I made it up earlier. Which I'll play in now. And again, I'm just interested to... because you watch a lot of American telly, a lot of American news.
Yeah, I do.
So here's his Mia get it.
And I get it. I hear what they're saying. I understand it. And I'll be much more mindful. That's my responsibility. And I'll meet it.
What do you think?
He's right. I mean, when I was a kid, I don't know about you, but you'd often hear or see people slapping women on the behind, or Yeah, I was once groped in a very early job I had, which wasn't particularly pleasant. Yeah.
Yes, me too. A couple of times.
Yeah.
Yes, a girlfriend's father once took an unseemly interest in me. But that's another. This is a family podcast.
This was by a woman who. I was. Yeah, it was in an office. I was working as your university, only summer job I took, and I lasted 2 days before I got sacked. But I was sacked for good reasons.
I've never been groped by a woman, but I have been groped by several men. As I said, a former girlfriend's father, but also when I was covering the Egyptian revolutions or coups d'etats from a few years ago in Tahrir Square, honestly, I could not get from one side of the square to the other through these massive crowds without being groped several times.
Wow.
By men, I hasten to add.
This episode has gone off at a tangent, hasn't it? I must admit.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, it's fascinating.
Okay, well, no. Well, in that case,
it is.
No. I want to get away from all that sort of talk and move on to anal sex. Okay. No, but there's a reason. There's a reason for this.
Sorry.
And yes. Sorry. While we quickly finishing on Biden,
I think you should underline the fact that we're not talking about Joe Biden anymore.
No, absolutely not. Although we are, but not about that. But I just wanted to finish off because I did notice also in his video he said, in the coming months, I'll be talking with you about a whole bunch of issues and I'll be direct with you, as I was just direct with you. That's a hint about he is going to stand.
Oh, he's got to, yeah. But I'm glad he's dropped the idea that Stacey Abrams was going to be his running mate. I think they floated that to the media to see how it would be received, and it really...
didn't I say to you last week who's Stacey Abrams?
Abrams.
Yeah. Who's Stacey Abrams?
Because she ran for the governorship.
I know, you told me last week, but I just didn't take any notice because I thought that's not going to run. However, let's go to item 2.
With the Sultans of Swing.
Well, that's the Sultan of Swing, as in sort of hanging or other such practices, because it's about Sultan Hassan al-Bolkiah, the Sultan of Brunei. He's brought in these strict new Islamic laws that makes, forgive me, anal sex and adultery offences punishable by stoning to death.
And swinging, I'd imagine.
Yes. Swinging would definitely be out, and all that sort of thing. Now, there may be some people that look at the idea of stoning to death and think, well, what's wrong with that? But most of us would sort of think that's, not such a good idea in 2019. Now, most of these laws relate only to Muslims. Now, there's 420,000 people, more or less, in Brunei. About 2/3 of them, probably a wee bit more, are Muslim, but some of the laws will relate to everybody. The new measures came into force, range of different crimes and laws. So, death for anal sex, adultery, and insulting the Prophet Muhammad. Theft, first offence, you just get your right hand chopped off. Second offence, you get your left foot chopped off. Lesbian sex, 40 lashes with a cane and or 10 years in jail. Religion, persuading, telling or encouraging a Muslim child under 18 to accept the teachings of religions other than Islam, well, that's liable to a fine or jail. There is a but. And no jokes, please. There is a but. Brunei, this is not a laughing matter, David. Brunei already has the death penalty, right? It hasn't carried it out since 1957. On the death for those adultery and anal sex, etc., you need 4 witnesses, which is pretty unlikely, let's be fair. Pretty unlikely to get a conviction if you need 4 witnesses. So these death sentences and other things are probably not going to be carried out. But it doesn't really make it okay, does it?
Well, it's not the best holiday brochure I've ever heard, is it? Really? So, yeah, it doesn't. Well, we have this conversation last week. We had it about football. We had it probably the week before. We seem to have it every week. Where how do you deal how does a liberal democracy deal with cultures where they have very different attitudes regarding religion, punishment, morality? I don't know. I feel like I was talking about Armando Iannucci a couple of weeks ago, and there's a great sketch in one of his episodes where there's a company like in Yorkshire, one of these a quarry business, but they're selling rocks to somewhere like Brunei, and it's like they're trying to deal with the morality of what might the rocks be used to do. Are they for building, or are they for stoning? And it's like this really dark and wonderful sketch.
I like that sort of satire.
Yeah. Armando, I still had Channel 4 for free. But anyway, so I feel like I'm in the same boat. I mean, my attitude towards all things is I want to enhance liberal freedom for people. I don't care what people do as long as that doesn't affect me. So I just think it's terrible, but what do we do? I mean, I know.
Hang on, you do care what they do, because as long as it doesn't affect you, because it doesn't affect you that people might theoretically be stoned to death in Brunei, but you care about it.
I do care about it, but it becomes it's in a broader context of religion playing a part in people's lives, and then then you get into the question of what our government how should our government be dealing with these countries? And George Clooney's just done a thing where he doesn't want people to work. Is it the Dorchester? Boycott the Dorchester?
Yeah, basically, the Sultan heads the Brunei Investment Agency. The Brunei Investment Agency owns a whole shed-load of top hotels. Dorchester in London and the Beverly Hills Hotel in Los Angeles are two of the best known. So I'm never staying there, ever.
No, I don't think
I was going to say again there, but I've never stayed there, and I probably now never will. Not that I was ever going to anyway, but I'm making my own personal stand.
Well, I'll make my personal stand. I'll never use the Dorchester in London either.
Me neither. It's Premier Inn all the way. So that's 3 products now. We've got this is brought to you by Milk Trade.
I was actually going to write to the people at Sillick Bang last week and see if we could get a sponsorship deal, but I didn't get around to it.
I don't think the Dorchester's going to give us a deal now. No. Sorry, so going back to the issue about what the hell gives us the right to comment on the cultural practices of this country. Well, it's quite simple. I'm British. I'm in Britain. There's freedom of speech. Yeah. It's a liberal democracy, and I'm allowed to have an opinion. So anybody that wants to say, "Oh, this is cultural misogyny by you," or who the hell do you think you are? It's quite simple. I'm me. What I wouldn't do is go to Brunei and, I wouldn't go to Brunei and shout the odds, because it is up to them to shape their culture in their own way, in their own time. But I have every right to say that I personally believe that the system where you do not chop people's feet off for stealing something is a better one.
No, I agree, and I think it's the place where that culture interfaces with our culture. You have the right to say, I don't want to go to the Dorchester, I don't want to be part of anything which is going to support that. It's like that, the quarry in Yorkshire. I'm not going to sell rocks which are going to be used for stoning. But this is the argument we had last week, and I've tied myself in knots all week, kind of thinking about the whole Jordan Peterson at Cambridge issue, and I still think it's right, because I still think this is the same argument that if you were right. Why did Of
course I was right.
Sorry. Why did they invite him and then disinvite him? But I still think it comes down to freedom, and having read up more around Jordan.
Actually, I was going to say to you, David, that I didn't give it a passing thought because I was far too busy worrying about whether Leeds United are going to go up or not. Seriously, that is what I spend most of my time worrying about. But you've reminded me, I did think about that, and I did think it through, and I'm not. To be serious, obviously I'm wrong sometimes, and we can disagree. But I still thought I'm not sure how you've arrived at your thought processes there, because I wasn't making the argument that they didn't have the right, A, to invite, and B, to disinvite. I was simply talking about the reasons, and what I regarded as craven reasons, why they caved in. Because if they felt he was good enough to invite, and then somebody criticises them for that, what are they actually saying? Yeah, you know what? We were really stupid.
If they are saying that,
no, they're just saying that they're lily-livered.
Yeah, you're saying they're livid. I'm saying that they've probably thought, well, probably actually it was wrong. Now, I agree. I totally agree with your point of view that if it was simply because they gave into the pressure of others, then I agree that's not right, because they have the freedom to choose to invite or disinvite. That's the only argument I was making. You were right if it is about if they didn't have good reasons for disinviting him. If they had good reasons for disinviting him, then I'm perfectly happy with that. And that's the same here. You know, if you've got a good reason not to stay at the Dorchester, do it. I mean, just don't do it because George Clooney says so. That would annoy me. It's like that kind of difference.
So, are we agreed that it is reasonable and we have every right to express an opinion about practices, cultural practices, in another country?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Would we have, well, not legally, ethically, would we have the right to go to Brunei and say, you know what, this is wrong?
Well, this is like I always get confused about the difference between ethics and morals, and some people say there isn't a difference. But ethically, I think you would, as far as a universal human right, what they're doing is wrong. So therefore, if you subscribe to that irrespective of context, stoning men and women is wrong.
But hang on, you've just walked straight into...
You're trapped.
No, I don't set them. You've just walked straight into the concept that there is no such thing as universal rights, because what I regard as the despots use this argument to justify what I regard as bestial practices, which is to say, some people say, you know, what you regard as universal human rights, what you really mean are Western values. Well, we don't have your values. Consequently, you can't say there's such a thing as universal human rights. To which my response is, someone getting their toenails pulled out in some horrible cell in country X is not saying, you know what, it's all right, this, don't really mind it, you know, it's just a Western value.
No, I don't hold that the Western values, but I would, because
I don't,
because I'm a rationalist, and and I'm also an atheist, and I don't subscribe to the notion that once you get rid of God, that anything's permitted, which is
God will forgive you.
I've just done a picture of Mark Francois on the cross, so I mean I'm going to hell anyway. So
I've seen it. Yeah. Why don't you post? Can you post that on the notes of the podcast?
I will do. Yeah.
Well, practicing Christians, look away now.
But I'm already going to hell because I'm a monk's book. But so I, as an atheist, I believe that you can establish moral behaviour based on reason and, you know, simply thinking about life long enough.
Okay.
I don't believe you need a God to come along. And what a lot of these countries do is they say, these powers are given us to by God, and I can do what I like because you can't argue with God. And I don't accept that at all. So.
Just to round it up,
I'm not sure I answered the question whether it's right to go to those countries.
I'm not sure there is an answer, or right or wrong answer.
It probably is right, but it's probably unwise, I'd say.
Yeah, and you also have to not
care about your toenails because you're going to get dragged out pretty quickly.
Ow! Again, to finish it off, it's the Sultan is the one that has pushed it because he's an absolute monarch. It is unlikely that these things will be carried out, but that doesn't mean that it's still okay from a certain perspective to have them on the statute books. And again, for the record, the death penalty for same-sex relationships still exists in parts of Nigeria. It's on the statute books, I think, in Somalia, Mauritania, Sudan, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. 70 different countries criminalise same-sex relations, and I think it's only about 26 or 27 countries in the world that allow same-sex marriages. So our wussy liberal viewpoint, centrist wussy liberal viewpoint, David, remains a minority in the world.
Yeah. Are we going to move on to America? Back to America on this part?
No.
Well, can we just talk about Buttigieg?
Well, we just have then. Go on.
Well, I was just going to say 70% of Americans apparently don't care if the next president is gay, which you could say it's a great step forward,
okay.
But...
Yeah, can you? Yeah, briefly. And one of the reasons is that the new mayor of Chicago is
Lori Lightfoot.
Is Lori Lightfoot, who, and it is contextual, is black, female, and a lesbian.
Yeah.
And she won it hands down, didn't she?
She did, yeah.
Yeah. Now, Chicago is an urban area. The urban areas are often more liberal, but yeah, you know, that's quite something.
But the question is whether they're ready for a gay president. Now, I think 70% is a great sign, but that still means that 30% are still have a problem with it. And when it comes to a tight presidential election, which they always are going to be tight from here on in, I just don't think it's wise of Democrats to go that route, even though he's a great candidate and I really like him. So,
What, Joe Biden?
No, Pete Buttigieg.
Why are you mentioning Pete Buttigieg?
Oh, because he's the emergent candidate which everybody loves, because he's a mayor of one of these small towns. He's not particularly well known, but he's just got an amazing media presence there's great stories about how he learned Norwegian just in order to read a book, and then he turns up at hospitals providing translation services. Is a bit of a superhero figure for the kind of American left, but he is gay, and it's a question. I mean, he could be the standout candidate, but should Democrats risk it?
Well, I'm not going to opine, because I said a long time ago that I felt America would have a female president before it had a black president, and I was wrong.
Yeah, that's it. So, I mean, they could have a gay president before they have a female president, which is amazing.
Yeah. Unless, of course, it was a lesbian.
Don't even get me. I noticed one of the crazy right-wing American politicians suggested that Donald Trump should declare himself female, so he can now declare himself the first female president, because of the whole issue of gender rights in America.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past him.
I wouldn't put it past him, actually. I think he likes having his name down in history. So Donald Trump.
Now, can we break out now into a chant of "Oh, Jeremy Corbyn"?
Oh, go on.
Oh, Jeremy Corbyn. It's not right, is it, what they did? The parachute regiment members.
Well, I wrote an article which actually I might have to put up on the site, because I think there's a lot of controversy over it. I've looked at the video 100 times and I still think they're shooting at the targets. I don't think...
Hang on. All right. For anyone who hasn't seen it or doesn't know the story, the parachute regiment is currently deployed 3-para in Kabul, Afghanistan. There's an underground shooting range where they practice, and the video has emerged of 3 or 4 of them. They're firing pistols, and then the camera pans to the left, and on the left of the picture is a picture of Jeremy Corbyn, and there are either bullet holes or paint splats. If they might be shooting tiny paint pellets, I'm not sure. And obviously this went viral. Obviously they are now under investigation. I don't understand your point, David, that they weren't shooting at him.
Well, let me explain. Do you remember 2 weeks ago when we mentioned Eisenstein's Battleship Potemkin, which we couldn't remember at the time? And it was in the context of me talking about how Eisenstein developed this technique, which he got from Marx, which we talked about last week, which is the idea of the dialectic. You have the thesis, the antithesis, which produces the synthesis.
The thesis.
Yeah. So the idea is you take a picture of some sheep, cut to some soldiers, and your mind makes a connection, and you think, soldiers are like sheep. Well, that video has an edit in it. It isn't like an obvious edit. It's you're looking at soldiers, the camera swings round, looks at a picture of Jeremy Corbyn. The brain automatically thinks they're shooting at Jeremy Corbyn. Now,
there's no edit. There's no edit.
No, there's no edit. But
okay, good.
It doesn't need to be like a straight cut. It's just you're looking at the soldiers. Then it swings round and it's looking at the picture of Jeremy Corbyn. You naturally think there was a comment or a meaning being forced upon you or presented to you that they were shooting the target of Jeremy Corbyn.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you keep rewatching the video, as I did,
no, look, I got it. I saw it first time.
Yeah.
I saw it first time. Right, there's 3 or 4 of them, and they are shooting. And as the camera swings round, you then see the 3 or 4. There's a pulley system, because what you can do is press a button and the image that you're shooting at then comes down the pulley towards you, and you can see, oh yeah, that was my grouping of my shots, and that they are shooting at ordinary targets. Absolutely, you follow it from across the roof of where the pulley is. Yes. Right, hang on. So I agree with you. They were not in that video shooting at Jeremy Corbyn's face.
Yeah.
Right next to the 3 or 4 pulleys, on another pulley, is the poster of Jeremy Corbyn with holes in it.
Yeah. Now, okay,
they or other members have been members of the British military have been shooting at a target of the leader of the opposition in Parliament.
Okay, let's just slow down, right? Yes. So you accept the fact that they weren't actually in that video shooting that picture?
I do.
Right. Then you can't establish why those bullet holes are in the picture of Jeremy Corbyn, because the reports are, now I'm putting my legal hat on here. The reports are that these pictures exist in that range because they use them in close protection. You know, they have a picture of a VIP. Yep. They're shooting targets which will be around the VIP. Now, yep. You've no idea how those marks or those bullet holes have occurred in that picture.
It's true.
So you cannot blame those 4 squaddies for that, because in my opinion you cannot establish it. They're innocent and they shouldn't be slandered by this awful thing. The question I have, and I think this is where it will eventually come down to, is whoever took that video was making a point about shooting Jeremy Corbyn. Now that is totally, totally against the rules. He should be done for it. But I just don't think I think the media has got to be a little bit careful of associating those 4 soldiers who are probably innocent of doing something which correctly would be terrible if it was true.
Actually, you're right. When the very first time I saw it and heard the story, I did work out very quickly that they hadn't been shooting at Mr. Corbyn. But I will admit, I jumped to the conclusion that they had been.
Well,
or that somebody had been. But hang on, the second time I saw the story on the news, there was the context that these guys are close protection, and so it is quite possible that they have been training, and that there are pictures of people which you're not supposed to shoot at, because sometimes when you go in. When you're practicing storming into a room, people will suddenly flash up a picture of someone, and they might be carrying a child.
Yeah.
And you have that half second to decide to shoot or not. So it could be that sort of scenario, and I agree. But it has to be investigated. And if they have been deliberately shooting, then it is. And I was criticised on Twitter today for saying that if they have been doing this is wrong, and they would say, "Oh well, it's not wrong," said somebody to me, because he's criticised the military. But, in an atmosphere in which an MP has been shot dead in this country recently, that's not the sort... If that's what they've been doing, it is despicable.
I totally agree with you. But I would say, one that this video does automatically, because of the way it's been filmed and the way that it swings around, it does... play to certain prejudices that people either have against the British Army or Jeremy Corbyn. It's playing into a very toxic bit of politics. The second thing, I've got a VR unit where I sometimes play these games where pictures shoot up of, and it's so easy to hit the wrong one. I mean, it's no surprise to me that the picture might have holes in it, but it doesn't mean that those 4 soldiers were doing that. So I just think it's a horrible bit of...
Yeah, there has been a rush to judgment.
It is a rush to judgment, and I think it's really terrible that 4 soldiers who, like I say, if you watch, also slow the video down, there's 4 targets, there's 3 figures at the end of the range, but there's 4 pieces of paper which look like targets on them. So the 4 soldiers match up with the 4 pieces of paper. For me, it's a non-story, except the issue of the person who did the video. Whoever shot that video was making a political point, and that's wrong.
It is a story. But there has been a rush to judgment about the people actually firing the weapons. There is an assumption, which, and as I said, I on my first glance at it did assume that. But as soon as I heard that this was a close protection team, I thought, hang on, there could be other scenarios that we don't know about, and there has to. Obviously, the MOD will have its investigation, and if that will take the appropriate action based on the facts.
One final point, simplest solution. I mean, it's Occam's razor. What's the simplest? Does anybody really think 4 soldiers would allow themselves to be filmed shooting the picture of the leader of the opposition? I mean,
you can't rule it out.
You can't rule it out, but
nor can you assume it.
Yeah.
Now, you know that you're not a doctor.
I am a doctor, just not the right sort.
Well, it's time for a Doctor Writes. What have you got this week?
I've got some good ones. As we record this, the House of Commons has been suspended because there's a leak in the roof, which everybody's taken it as like, this is a sign of, leak in Parliament or the terrible. Some people are saying it's sewage leaking in, but the House of Commons has assured us that it's only rainwater. But it's great. It's a nice little story to kind of end the sort of crazy Brexit we've had. Speaking of holes in the roof, yesterday Bill Hine, the owner and the creator of the Headington Shark, has died. The shark, this amazing sculpture which is stuck in a house on his home, in a head.
And it's in the roof,
it's
isn't
in the
it?
roof.
With the tail
It looks like it's nosediving into the roof, and it's caused a crater.
Yeah.
It's now an Airbnb, so you can actually go and stay there if you want to.
Oh, fantastic! It's worth, where is it?
2 New High Street on Headington, Oxford.
Headington. I was in Oxford last night. And Headington is quite a nice part of town, quite reasonably close to the centre.
Yeah.
So
there's a great story. It's a great story about it because you had to get planning permission, and the councillors have finally agreed that it's actually so unique that they couldn't get rid of it.
Yeah, I love it. It's a work of art. If Damien Hirst had done it, it'd be lauded.
Yeah.
Anyway,
still talking about things hanging from odd places. I don't know if it's Alessandra Mussolini has attacked Jim Carrey on Twitter because he drew a picture of her grandfather and his mistress hanging.
I saw that. I didn't.
She called him "You are a bastard," she said, and apparently she's threatened to sue anybody who said anything bad about her fascist tyrant grandfather. But
he did drain the swamps, and he made the trains run on time. Apparently.
Anyway, still about people hanging around. There's been.
Do you know that great line from The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie?
Oh God, I've seen that many years ago. It's a great film. Go on.
Well, it's a book, but you bloody film. But Mussolini was a great man, children. That's actually from the film. Now, of course, he wasn't, but he did drain the swamps.
Yeah. Still about people hanging around. You see, I'm linking them this week.
That's good.
A woman was hanging around Mar-a-Lago and she's been arrested, and she was thought to be working for the Chinese government because she was carrying 2 passports and a thumb drive containing malicious software.
Mar-a-Lago, as in
Trump's base of operations.
That's right, in the state of
Florida. Yeah.
Just for people who don't know who Mar-a-Lago is.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, so they think she might be spying. So it's really interesting because at the moment the Trump administration's under attack because they've been really lax on security arrangements, checking the security of people working for them.
Speaking of that, and I actually saw it the week before last podcast and was going to mention it, but was it Spain where the North Korean embassy was broken into?
Oh yeah, and everything nicked or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was some mad opposition group, but of course everyone's saying but it was actually the CIA.
Oh, I didn't know who did it. I did hear about it because I thought it was like one of these 7 Days of the Condor things where a CIA base is suddenly raided and covered up. Anyway, speaking of Trump, I like this one. He's had another slip. He was trying to talk about the origins of the Mire investigation, and he called it the oranges of the Mire investigation.
Oh, that's the oranges of the Mueller investigation. That's a film.
Yeah, he did it twice as well, actually, because he managed to say origin once, and he was so confident he tried to say it again, and he said oranges. He also claimed his father was born in Germany when he was actually his grandfather. Lastly, on the topic...
you can become a birther on that.
Yeah. On the topic of orange things, Garfield telephones have been washing up on the coast of Brittany for years, apparently. And
read that as well. It's a container of Garfield phone.
Brilliant.
No.
Yeah.
Garfield the cat, again, for people that don't follow it.
Garfield the president, yeah.
So is it little models of Garfield, or was it phone covers or something else?
Actual phones, but in the shape of Garfield. And they've been washing up on the beaches for years, and they finally tracked it down. There's a container which was washed off a ship and stuck up one of these inlets in a cave system or something.
Well, you've done it again. You've picked out far more interesting ones than mine.
Well, I'm just glad I haven't picked up any of the same ones as yours, because then we'd have.
Well, I do have one that matches as good as yours at the end. It's just 4 this week of things we lost in the mire. Several last week's podcast this week, you'll remember we talked about the Algerian President Abdel Aziz Bouteflika. Well, he says he will be resigning, and before his current term ends on the 28th. So that's the end of his 20 years on power, but the same question remains, is the power, as it's known, going to replace him with one of their own, or as the continuing demonstrations demand, a genuine fresh start? The Americans have stopped any further deliveries of F-35 fighter jets and equipment to Turkey. Why? Because fellow NATO member Turkey has not stopped its order for Russia's S-400 surface-to-air missile systems. You're not getting any more of our planes or equipment, says the Pentagon, until you cancel the order with Russia. A Greek leader has visited Macedonia for the first time in 28 years, which, seeing as they're neighbours, is a long time. although to be precise, a Greek Prime Minister has visited North Macedonia. As you know, they've just renamed themselves North Macedonia, hence a Greek Prime Minister, of whom one of his regions is called Macedonia, can finally actually go there. And this is my favourite. A 61-year-old Nebraskan woman has given birth to her own grandchild. Yes. Cecile Eledge carried the baby girl on behalf of her son Matthew and his husband Elliot Dougherty. Yes, Dougherty. So Matthew supplied the sperm. Elliot's sister, so that's Matthew's husband, Elliot's sister supplied the eggs. So I think that makes Elliot's sister the mother of her brother's daughter.
You've lost me.
Yeah.
I did actually have a story similar to that this week, which I didn't include, but two Brazilian brothers who were twins, identical twins, have been sleeping around and using the fact that they look like each other to maximise the number of partners they have. And one of the partners has got pregnant. And because they can't prove the DNA and neither one of them can admit or will admit which is the father, they both now actually got to pay the child support. I thought that was a great one.
That's right. Oh, it's a brilliant story. And in fact, I did see that. I know you're a godless
heathen,
atheist, godless atheist. But do you know the story about Solomon?
No, I don't. I might do, but you'd have to remind me.
Well, two women both say they are the mother of a baby.
Cut him in half.
Yeah, that's the one. So they go to Solomon and say, "You're a wise Solomon type person. After all, you're named after that wise Solomon man." And so Solomon says, "Right, who's the mother?" They both say, "I'm the mother, I'm the mother." Right, takes the sword, "I'm going to cut the baby in half, you can have half, you can have half." One woman says, "Yep, that's fine with me." The other woman says, "Oh my God, no, give the whole baby to her." At which point, of course, Solomon says, "Aha, you are the real mother." So I think they ought to try that with the brothers.
This podcast has taken another tangent. Now you're advocating cutting babies in half.
Right, it's... Ask Tim a question if you've got a little jingle.
I'll put it in here.
It's time to ask Tim another cat. To pick his brain. Ask him anything, just not to tame. It's time to ask Tim via email. Or perhaps by text. If you mention Norwich, he'll be vexed.
God bless you. From Dan. Dear Tim and Dr. W. That means you, David, because you've got a PhD in... Yeah. Dear Tim and Dr. W, did you see this article? No, it doesn't work on podcast, does it? A link. Okay, yeah. So the article was about Mohammed Mahmoud. He's won an OBE, Order of the British Empire. Now, Mohammed is the imam at he was the imam at the Finsbury Park Mosque. And you remember the far-right terrorist drove a van into worshippers?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he falls out the van. Some of the worshippers, quite understandably perhaps, begin to attack him, and the imam jumped in between and quite possibly saved his life. And for his actions as a man of God, he's been given an OBE. He has written subsequently an article saying, "Thanks, it's great, I love everything, but I'm not sure about this word empire." Because his cultural heritage, the empire has slightly different connotations than it does for many people. And as Dan asks, he's got a point surely. Why do we continue to refer the British Empire in awards? Surely Order of the Commonwealth or similar would be much better, a group of equal nations. David?
I agree with him, but I don't think Commonwealth. I think we should stick with OBE and make it Order of the British Establishment. Because... that's essentially what it is, isn't it?
No. Well, okay, hang on. So Mohammed is a member of the British establishment now, is he?
No. I think these orders are conferred by the British establishment. The honour system is terribly in need of overhauling. It's the fact, he can do a brave thing like that and he gets an OBE, but some actor attends a few charity balls and they become a dame or a sir. I just find the whole thing slightly laughable.
Yeah, most of them I take very little notice of. But, hundreds of honours are given out, and they are given out to people that care for elderly people in homes and stuff.
Yes, I agree, and I want those people to rewarded. But I just find that the way that people are rewarded for doing significant things isn't on the level of the people who are getting rewarded for doing.
I agree with you,
things.
and I agree.
Joan Collins is a dame. You know.
Well, there's nothing like a dame. Mohammed, I agree with him. I agree with Dan. I agree with you. That yes, the order system needs overhauling, and one of the parts of the overhauling is probably to get the word empire out
I agree.
in 2019. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Sarah Sittonen writes, hello Sarah, dear Tim
hello.
And Dr. W. I think she means you, David, because you've got a PhD and therefore you're sorry. Loving your podcasts, equal measures of hilarity and information. Which way around that is for you and me, I don't know. I think
we're going to have to do something hilarious now.
Yeah. Can you bleep that out, please? And put a bit of information in, which I'll start this again. Loving your podcast, information, which I can later attempt to pass off as my own intelligent thinking. Well, I do that as well.
Me too.
Yeah. So many thanks for that, and please keep it coming, or I'll look like I've peaked too soon and run out of original thought. One slight but quite funny point of correction: the mannequin piss.
Oh yeah.
Or pee. The mannequin pee is pronounced pee, not piss, as the good doctor so brilliantly enunciated.
Yeah, but I'm not very good at languages, and I do play things for laughs, so I like the idea it's mannequin piss.
I wondered if I thought to myself, maybe you didn't know it's called pee. Pee. I mean, I lived in Brussels, so I do. Or maybe he does know, but it's funnier to call it piss, given that it was a story about a statue urinating.
It's funnier to call it piss because it hasn't got the E on the end. In French, you pronounce the final syllable if it's E at the end, is that right?
Might be. I speak French, but I don't know.
Oh, yeah. So it would be P.
Je parle français comme un vache espagnol.
No. Go on.
I speak French like a Spanish cow. Anyway, it's a very, very old-fashioned phrase. Je parle français comme un vache espagnol. It's probably quite offensive now, but it just meant I speak rubbish French.
Yeah, we're going to get letters from Spanish cows now, aren't we, complaining?
Sorry, I'm sorry about this, Sarah. So she's corrected you. Quite right, too. Yeah. Anyway, here's her question. What are your thoughts on the attempted ousting of various MPs from their electoral wards by local activist parties voting, e.g. Dominic Grieve, Luciana Berger, etc.? Will this actually serve to catapult them into positions of higher recognition, rather than the presumably initial intention of a modern-day political purge? As ever, please keep it coming. China.
Let's say China.
Remember, we have to say China. Doorbells and all. Sorry, that was you last week. And good luck with the Sillet Bank sponsorship deal. Best regards.
I'll write to them this week.
Best regards, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. So the question, what do you reckon? Does it serve to catapult them into positions of higher recognition?
I think it's purge time. I think
it's purge, yeah.
I mean, something like Dominic Grieve is not going to go away overnight, but his statue, he will disappear from the media if he does get deselected.
Well, exactly.
And it's a really sad day when Dominic Grieve, who was always respected as one of the future brains of the party, who was like heading a think tank, however old he was like considered like a real brains behind the Tory kind of the new Tory party, and now he's like being ousted. It's a bad day for the Tories.
And ditto Luciana Berger and Frank Field. Well, he quit before he was pushed.
What I would say is it's pointing towards the fact that the Tory party is and always going to face a challenge from UKIP, and people thought Tories would have responded by moving more centre, and they're just moving further to the right.
No, but to answer Sarah's question, I think they are briefly catapulted into higher recognition, which does give them a platform. And Luciana Berger, for example, will be a leading light if there is a new party formed, but she may not be an MP. Which is a different thing.
Terrible name, by the way. Change was a terrible name for this new party. But
did you see one of them stood up and said that they're in Parliament and said their new name was change.org, and Chuka Ramuna was behind her and said it's change, it's not change.org, that's the website. Anyway, Craig writes, I need to publicly out Tim for his attempt at pronouncing Taoiseach.
Taoiseach.
Yeah, Taoiseach. No, Taoiseach. Yes. So anyway, Craig's publicly called me out. Sorry, Craig. Funnily enough, Tim's comment about the meaning of the Streets of No Name, this was about the U2 song, meaning the afterlife. At least I think he was saying that. Yes, that's my understanding, that the Streets of No Name is a sort of version of heaven. Anyway, that got me my one and only A in English in school.
Well done.
Well, he's beaten me. I didn't get any A's. Quite a lot of E's. Anyway, serious question. Do you feel that a special series or movie of the thick of it based on Brexit should be made, with Tucker switching to the Tories? But the real question, are the two leaders of the main parties really the worst of all time in Britain? Will Theresa be remembered in the same way as Chamberlain if things go as badly as expected? David?
I think so. I think they are both terrible, but it depends on whether you think that Theresa May... So there's some theories that she's actually working a very good ruse for the Remainers by making it so bad that she's actually going to quietly usher in, a second, pushing things towards the unbelievable, unacceptable second referendum. But I think they're two terrible leaders, and I think they're just polarising politics, and there's a lot of people who feel that they haven't got a voice, and I think this is why a new party should, will gain traction and will have followers. But I just don't think change is a great name. I think you don't want change; you want a better name than that.
I don't know. I don't know enough about British political leaders for the past 200 years to know if they're the worst of all time, but they're the worst in my living memory.
I think people disparage Chamberlain. I think that if you read Robert Harris did a really good book about the lead up to World War II recently. It was a really good book, but it kind of sort of portrays Chamberlain as in a slightly kinder role than I think history kind of judges him.
By the way, when I just said in my living memory, I'm not sure I have any other sorts. Right, guess who's back? Back again.
Oh, is he back? Oh, God. That's great. I've been worried about him.
Jack's back.
Brilliant.
And Jack's okay. Jack, again, for people new to the podcast, Jack is backpacking around the world, possibly, and not just Basingstoke, as I suggested. And he listens to the podcast while he's backpacking, which is great. Anyway, he disappeared, and we were a bit worried.
We thought he'd fallen off a cliff or something.
Yeah, I thought he was in Mongolia or with no signal. But it turns out he's in the Andes.
Wow.
Yeah,
great.
He's in the Andes. Tim, David, call off the search. The email I sent last week must have been blocked by the Andes. We're alive and well, listening this week from Quebrada de Humahuaca in Argentina. Yeah. I'm holiday there. I've got a second home there. Actually, I looked it up. Quebrada de Humahuaca is this really long, like 120 mile long valley. So I like to think that Jack and his girlfriend are trekking through it, listening on their iPods. iPods? Well, yes. People used to have those, in the last century. Anyway, thank you for taking time to discuss my question. We will be travelling up to Colombia over the next few months. So the Maduro-Guaido situation in Venezuela is the forefront story in the region. Any marathon-length special episodes for the 20-hour journeys would be fab. Well, Jack, David has long wanted to elongate this podcast.
I'm just happy to carry on chatting.
20 hours, it's nothing, is it?
I've got nothing to do, you see. Yeah.
On a side note, the power and politics of flags, thank you, Jack, little reference to a book I wrote called Worth Dying For, The Power and Politics of Flags, is on display prominently in Buenos Aires. People fly blue or green flags, or blue and greens, or green scarves to show support for the side of the pro-life, pro-choice debate they're on. Yeah, I mean, it happens a lot. If you follow Thai politics, as I'm sure you do, David, I think is it red and yellow, and you immediately know, right, they're from that party, because when they go on the demonstrations on the streets, and it's very useful if you want to sort of hit people with clubs, as they do, and sticks and things, because it's just there's someone wearing yellow, smack. Whereas in France,
it's a bit like Liverpool, like where if you wear blue, you get hit, hit by love. Yeah.
Same thing. But I don't know if you've seen this. In France, it's very complicated because the extreme far right Gilets jaunes are wearing Gilets jaunes, and the extreme far left Gilets jaunes are wearing Gilets jaunes. And there's some amazing videos out on YouTube of them battering each other. You think, how do they know? They're both wearing the yellow vests.
I often think that about football hooligans when they don't actually have the shirt on.
Oh, I can tell a Scouser by the way he walks. Well, right, no, more a Cockney, right? They've got their arms out, giving it large, you know, like that. I bet you can picture that. Yeah, you giving it a bit of that, yeah. Whereas Mancunians, they all walk like that geezer out of that pop group, not in the Happy Stone Roses. God, yeah. The Simeon,
Gallagher,
Simeon walk, they call it.
Yeah, they do. There's a guy around here who walks like that, and I never heard him speak. And then all of a sudden, he's broad Mancunian, and I could just tell it's like got the thing. Scousers have got that whole the thing off the Harry Enfield thing, but you don't see that so much. The big moustaches and the big perms. It's not something you really see these days. Yeah.
Sorry.
Anyway, is there no sign of the secret life of monks in these bookshops?
Sorry? David wrote a book called The Secret Life of Monks. It's a book of cartoons and it's brilliant. Now, David, are you ready?
I'm ready.
It's that time.
I'm trying to be excited, but go on. Don't have to shout carnival or something. Fiesta.
It's much better than that. It's much better. Again, if we stick a link on, it's fantastic stuff.
It sounds like the Rhythm of the Saints, the Paul Simon album, the beginning of that.
Very, very similar. And in fact, I'm now going to have to look up Rhythm of the Saints. About where they got that from, because this one is from Latin America.
Yeah. It is, yeah. I think.
Oh, by the way, sorry, I've forgotten Sarah, whose email we read out. I'd actually wrongly cut a bit, which was really important. She was kind enough to. Remember last week the Hovis advert. And
we were talking about.
You thought it was in Yorkshire or Lancashire, and I said it was down south. And she has very kindly written it's in. I better get this right. It's in Dorset.
Is it?
Yeah, but because the voiceover is this is good today. It's all straight flat cap Yorkshire Lancashire. Everyone sort of assumes.
Is it Brian Glover? Brian Glover did it.
It was in Kes.
Was it? Yeah. Colin Wellandwood was in here, who used to live around the corner from us here. Sorry. Was it directed by Ridley Scott, or was it Alan Parker, that advert?
It was yes. Again, I wouldn't have known that, but it was one of those mega. It was one of those mega. It was very early days because Ridley Scott came out of advertising, didn't he?
It did, yeah.
So it's probably him. I don't know if. Well, The Duelist wasn't his first film, surely.
I think The Duelist was his first film, and then he made
that was with Keith Carradine and
Harvey
Nicks. No, the other one, Harvey Nichols.
Keitel.
Harvey Keitel.
Yeah. I think he was his first film. Well, we could fix it next week, but I think
it's a brilliant. The Duelist is beautiful, beautifully shot. Napoleonic Wars. Some of the scenes, and you just realise what a genius Ridley Scott.
But it's similar ground to Kubrick's Barry Lyndon, which is a brilliant film, absolutely stunningly brilliant film. But yeah, those films in those periods, I don't know. I'm not really a fan of them usually, but those two, The Duelist and Barry Lyndon. Oh.
Did you know that Harvey Keitel was supposed to be the star of Mean Streets?
Was he?
Yeah.
Was he? I didn't know that.
Which was the breakthrough film of Scorsese. Yeah.
Yeah,
before Taxi Driver.
Yeah, and, which Keitel's in as well.
Yes.
He plays the
so when they were shooting it, the main character was supposed to be the Harvey Keitel character, but De Niro just blew everyone away. And so when they edited it, they came to edit it. They bigged up the De Niro role a lot more, and with some clever cutting, made it about him. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, it's worth checking.
Are these the facts of the week? Have we stumbled into
sorry. And by the way, that the drum was this week's alarm because it's this week's facts, which I will get to in a moment. I'm terribly sorry.
Yeah. Get me talking about films and this stuff.
It's. I hope I'm not wrong, and it's worth checking. But that's my understanding of Mean Streets. So, and De Niro went on. Keitel, yes, did have But let's face it, it's almost a walk-on part in Taxi Driver, where he plays the pimp. He's in about, 4 or 5 scenes. He's probably on screen for 3.5 minutes.
Yeah, it's one of those careers where you always think he's going to be bigger.
Yeah,
he was in
well, and from this is what reminded me about because of the duelists. He then pretty much went away, and there was a character actor, whereas De Niro went stratospheric, and it was only when Tarantino pretty much rescued Harvey Keitel in
Reservoir Dogs.
Reservoir Dogs. No, was it Reservoir Dogs? Yes, it was. And then subsequently the much bigger film. Oh, come on. Tarantino's...
Pulp Fiction.
Thank you. Sorry. And it was Pulp Fiction.
I'm not a huge Tarantino fan. I don't know why.
But that's when he suddenly came back and everyone just remembered, oh my God, this guy is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
have you ever seen Cigar Shop?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's a tiny little film. He's just this guy that sells cigars on a street corner in New York.
I saw him the other night. Red Dragon was on, the Harris film, the film, the Hannibal Lecter film. Yeah. He was in that. He's a great actor.
Yeah, and did you see him the other day in the Direct Line advert?
Not such a good actor.
He's brilliant. Anyway, this week's facts. I'm not going to ask you because we've gone so far out of the other edge of the envelope, you'd never guess it.
I was going to say anal sex, but go on.
Close enough. Joe Biden. This is for you, David. This is for you and your obsession with American politics. But it's also for all of us because if he's going to get the nomination, and there is A, if he's going to stand, and B, if he's going to get the nomination, and C, if he becomes president, we'll remember one or two of these facts. You ready?
Yeah. Well, one, he'll stand. 2, he might not get the nomination, and if he does, he'll win. But it's getting the nomination is the tricky bit for him. Go on.
Joe Biden's father was born wealthy, played polo wealthy, but ruined himself, and so Joe and his siblings grew up in a proudly working-class home.
Oh, how did he ruin himself? Lifting something, or?
I think it might have been something to do with alcohol.
Oh, was it? Oh, dear.
When he was a child, Biden's classmates teased him for stuttering when he spoke. He overcame his speech impediment by himself, by reading long poems out loud in front of a mirror.
Oh. Somebody else did that recently. I can't think.
That was the king, wasn't it? The king of...
Oh, yeah, the
King's Speech.
King's Speech, yeah.
Joe Biden received 5 student draft deferments during the Vietnam War and was later disqualified from service because of the asthma that he suffered as a teenager. Oddly enough, the asthma was not severe enough to stop him playing on his high school football team or for the University of Delaware.
A bit like Donald Trump's bone spurs didn't stop him being an athlete.
Yeah, echoes.
Yeah.
When Biden,
by the way, it was Samuel L. Jackson had a stutter and helped cure himself
and he was also in
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, you see how it all links together.
Yes.
It's like we spend like 18 hours a week, don't we, planning these clever connections.
Fact. When Biden won his first ever Senate race, he was only 29, too young to be in Congress, but he turned 30 before being sworn into office and so took his seat. He's endured many tragedies. His wife, Naila, and infant daughter, Naomi, were killed in a car accident in 1972. His 2 sons, Beau and Hunter, were in the car but survived. Alas, Beau died of brain cancer in 2015. A Catholic, Biden says he finds comfort in the rosary beads he always carries. Biden remarried to the schoolteacher Jill Tracy Jacobs in June 1977 and has a daughter, Ashley, with her. In 1988, Biden had to have brain surgery after being diagnosed with 2 life-threatening cranial aneurysms. Before surgery, the surgeon told him he had a 35 to 50% chance of living a normal life afterwards. Like Donald Trump, Biden does not drink alcohol. He has said that alcoholism runs in his family. He voted to authorise the use of force in the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Biden became the highest-ranking government official to endorse same-sex marriage in 2012. Shortly afterwards, Obama did as well. If he does decide to run for president, it'll be his 3rd try. He ran in 1987 and withdrew after he was accused of failing to credit Neil Kinnock for a speech he made. Yeah, you remember it was the, how come I'm the first person in my family to go to university? He ran again in 2008. Lastly, Biden said to an Iowa reporter in 2007, the state of, I can say with certainty, I will not be anyone's vice president. End of story. I guarantee I will not do it.
Yeah. He'll also be the oldest president by about 8 years, I think.
Oh, bloody 90, yeah.
Yeah, 78 if he wins.
Do you know that there's an old story about two brothers? Yeah, this is because I've just remembered there's no dad joke this week, so I thought I'd better think of one quickly.
We end with a fable. It's Tim's story time. Settle down, children. Close the curtains.
Once upon a time, on a dark and stormy night, two robbers sat in the cave, and this is the story they told. There were two brothers. Okay?
Yeah.
One of them, when they grew up, one of them ran away to sea. And the other one became vice president of the United States. And neither of them were ever heard of again. It's a joke about being the vice president, okay?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, for God's sake, man. It's a joke about how unimportant it is unless the president gets a bullet. You know, neither of them were ever... Oh, God. Do you want to say goodbye?
Goodbye.
Okay, I'll leave you with a little song about somebody called Joe. Bye.
His name is Joe Biden. He's our nation's 47th vice president. His foot is always in his mouth. Republicans must think that he was heaven sent. Every time Joe speaks, Obama must be thinking, here we go again. Who's the politician always saying something stupid? It's Joe Biden.
The end is in sight.
The colourful phrase used by a charismatic figure.
This is the Trump shutdown.
Thank you, God bless you, and God bless the nations of the world.